There is a word that does not translate cleanly out of German. Leistungsgesellschaft. A society organized around performance, achievement, and the idea that what you earn reflects what you are worth. Switzerland did not invent this, but it may have embedded it more thoroughly than any other country on earth. And that cultural formation, as admirable as it is, has become the primary barrier to the policy reforms this series has been building toward. The roots run 5 centuries deep. In 1519, Ulrich Zwingli began the Swiss Reformation in Zurich. Calvin turned Geneva into what historians call the Protestant Rome from 1541. And the Huguenots, skilled craftspeople and merchants fleeing persecution in Catholic France, brought with them a specific cultural formation, the equation of productive work with moral virtue. Max Weber described it in 1905. Calvinist doctrine had fused profession and divine calling into a single idea. Diligent work was obedience to God. Idleness was not merely unproductive. It was a sign of damnation. The theology faded. The cultural formation did not. Switzerland offers a natural experiment that most countries cannot. Different cantons adopted different faiths during the Reformation, and those differences are still measurable today. Research on Swiss cantonal competitiveness finds that historically Protestant cantons consistently outperform Catholic ones on economic measures. The difference owes less to current religious practice than to 5 centuries of accumulated institutional impact. The Calvinist tradition did not merely celebrate work, it stigmatized dependence, and that stigma is still operating. The most striking evidence is not an attitude survey, it is a behavior. Research published in the Swiss Journal of Sociology found that a significant number of Swiss people who are legally entitled to social assistance do not claim it. Not because the process is too complicated, because claiming feels shameful. In German-speaking, rural, conservative communities, the gap between entitlement and take-up is largest. People are choosing poverty over the perception of dependence. The social cost of being seen as a burden outweighs the material cost of going without support they have legally earned. In 2016, Swiss citizens voted on a popular initiative for a guaranteed unconditional income. It was rejected by 77%. The proposed amount was 2,500 Swiss francs per month. In one of the most expensive countries on earth, that is not a comfortable living wage. It is a survival flaw, yet it was received as morally excessive. The rejection was not primarily a fiscal verdict. It was a cultural one. An unconditional payment felt less like a policy instrument and more like an attack on the social contract that everyone else was honoring. Switzerland's approach to childcare makes the same logic visible in a different register. UNICEF ranked Switzerland among the worst in the OECD for family-friendly policies. Families spend more than a quarter of their salaries on childcare, the highest in Europe. Maternity leave runs to 14 weeks. The underlying reasoning is consistent with the Leistungsgesellschaft. Having children is a private choice, and private choices should be privately financed. The problem is that the children bearing the consequences of these policy choices made no choice at all. This is not a story without hope. Switzerland's pragmatic tradition means that what works can eventually override what feels culturally correct. The cantonal structure allows pilot programs to generate local evidence before national adoption. And younger Swiss cohorts show measurably different attitudes toward work identity than their parents. The theological foundation of the Leistungsgesellschaft has dissolved. What remains is cultural habit. And cultural habits, unlike theological conviction, respond to evidence. Switzerland does not need to abandon its work ethic. It needs to update what the work ethic is for. A culture that genuinely values productive contribution should want a system that makes contribution possible for everyone, that removes the structural barriers preventing talent from developing, and that maintains the floor the economy needs to function. That is not a betrayal of the Leistungsgesellschaft. It is its logical continuation into a world the framework was never designed for. The full analysis, including the Weber thesis, the cantonal evidence, the non-take-up research, and the family policy data, is in this week's article linked below. Subscribe to FutureWorkSociety for weekly analysis on AI, automation, and the future of the social contract.